I was in 2 different studies. I was in a study when I was in 6th grade, getting my picture taken, filling out questionnaires, I'm getting brain scans, I'm doing all these things. And so the whole time I'm going through this and trying to figure out, how do I stop this? That was like the main conversation. How do you stop? How do you stop? How do you stop?
Body-focused repetitive behaviors like trichotillomania often remain hidden in plain sight and shrouded in misconceptions and stigma. What exactly are BFRBs, and how do they intertwine with our mental health and daily lives? Today, we delve into the heart of these questions with Barbara Lally. As the author of the Trichster Diaries and host of the podcast Trick Talks, Barbara brings a unique perspective on living with and understanding BFRBs. That's straight ahead on episode 202. I'm Emily Kircher-Morris, and this is the Neurodiversity Podcast.
What is neurodiversity?
You see the world differently.
Autism spectrum.
Gifted.
Complexities that are inherently inside.
ADHD.
Dysgraphia.
Tourette's.
All brains are different.
You are exactly what this world needs.
This is the
Neurodiversity
Podcast.
It's really hard to believe that we are almost at the end of 2023. As we look forward to the new year, a few quick notes. First, we're going to be opening up registration for the Neurodiversity University Educator Hub in January. So if you missed registering when we opened it last time, keep an eye out for that to open soon. If you want to make sure that you don't miss it, we have a link in the show notes for you to sign up for notifications when it does open. Also for educators, if you are looking for tools or resources for professional learning for your team, be sure to check out the offerings that are available for you to use on the neurodiversity.university platform. We have courses available on supporting twice exceptional students and dyslexia in the classroom, with more to come. The PD courses are a great opportunity to work towards creating neurodiversity-affirming environments. And lastly, I'm already starting to book live trainings and speaking engagements through the summer and fall for educators, mental health clinicians, and businesses who are looking to create more neurodiversity-affirming environments. And I would love to work with you, too. Just send a message through the contact form on our website, neurodiversitypodcast.com, to get in touch. Okay, my conversation with Barbara Lally is up next.
On a previous episode of the Neurodiversity Podcast.
I think there is this kind of in our cultural DNA still, this idea that properly behaving, children should be seen and not heard. I think there's kind of this mystical, unspoken idea that behavior management is appropriate and somehow valued. Somehow, with how the research was interpreted as successful, it became the mainstay of our education system. And when you look at the science, the neuroscience of resilience, and you lay that side by side to behavioral management, the two don't line up very well.
That's episode 116. Find it in your favorite podcast app.
Today's guest is Barbara Lally. Barbara is a teacher turned certified professional coach who focuses on body-focused repetitive behaviors. She is also the author of the book, The Trichster Diaries, that chronicles her journey with trichotillomania, and host of the podcast Trick Talks. So Barbara, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
So a good place to start today, since I mentioned these terms in the introduction, is related to some of the terms that I threw out there. So what specifically are body-focused repetitive behaviors, also known as BFRBs, and what is trichotillomania?
So body-focused repetitive behaviors are self-soothing behaviors like trichotillomania, which is the hair-pulling disorder. And what happens is you are using these strategies, the self-soothing behavior that ultimately causes physical damage to your body. And in order to be diagnosed with a BFRB, you have to have tried to stop but are unable to. So my BFRB is trichotillomania, that's the hair-pulling disorder, and I have this irresistible, uncontrollable urge to pull the hair from my body. Another example of a body-focused repetitive behavior is dermatillomania, or the skin picking disorder. Nail biting is a BFRB, lip biting, cheek biting. And it is our way of, kind of bringing ourselves back to this equilibrium. So for me personally, if I feel anything too strongly, I'm too excited, I'm too anxious, I'm going to go back to this behavior because it does soothe me and kind of gets me back to that even keel.
It sounds like when we talk about sensory stims, specifically related to autism, those are typically related to self-regulation skills. So recognizing that when I flap my hands, for example, that's a way of kind of expressing that emotion, usually like autistic joy. They kind of talk, happy, flappy hands. Or if I'm rocking back and forth, that's something that soothes me and helps me to stay calm. And so individuals who engage in BFRBs are typically doing it to regulate those emotions. It's a sensory way to have some input that then helps to also either calm or soothe whatever those emotions might be.
Yes. And there's a ton of comorbidity with BFRBs. And so when I was growing up, I first developed trichotillomania at 10 years old, and that was about 2001. So in 2001, things were looking a little differently. So I was misdiagnosed quite a few times before we knew exactly how to properly manage BFRBs and especially my hair pulling. So you can see, a lot of people in the autism community may experience or even, do the same behaviors as a person with a BFRB. There could be comorbidity, or it could just be the way that they are stimming, the way that they choose.
Let's talk about your story. So obviously your work in this field started as a personal journey. And you mentioned that you first started experiencing trichotillomania when you were about 10 years old. Can you talk us through your experiences living with it and seeking help throughout the years?
So when I first started pulling my hair, I pulled out my eyebrows. And right away, my parents noticed and said, wait a minute, what's happening? And for some reason, and this is true with other people in the community, we think we're going to get in trouble. We're still very young when this happens. We don't want to get in trouble, so we really sometimes don't even tell the truth. So I say, I don't know, they just fall out. So they go, well, if you don't know and we don't know, let's find someone who knows. We go to different doctors, they're telling them what happened, and eventually I have to admit that, hey, I actually do know what I'm doing. I look in the mirror, I do certain things when I, pull the hair. And so right away, not many people knew about trichotillomania. I did end up getting diagnosed fairly young with the name of the disorder, but the strategies that they would use to try to help didn't really work. A lot of times I would go to different therapists and have to be the one to educate them about what trichotillomania was. And so that felt bad. I felt very defeated. I was in 2 different studies. I was in a study when I was in 6th grade, getting my picture taken, filling out questionnaires, I'm getting brain scans, I'm doing all these things. And so the whole time I'm going through this and trying to figure out, how do I stop this? That was like the main conversation. How do you stop? How do you stop? How do you stop? And so I'm trying to figure this out while also people don't know around me. I don't know really what I'm doing. So I kind of was lost and felt really discouraged and really bad about myself. I really internalized so much of that pressure, and I turned it on me and all those negative thoughts because I wasn't able to stop. So I turned that on me. And then I had some years where things kind of grew back in. So I wasn't necessarily pulling a lot where you would notice. At one point in my life, after the eyebrows, I went for the eyelashes, and then I went for the hair from my scalp. And so I'm, putting on really thick headbands and fake glasses, and I have fake nails, and, I'm trying to have all these physical blockers. And I'm getting made fun of at school, and the teachers are noticing things, and it's just a whole whirlwind of chaos of just, I really don't want to be looked at all, please. So when everything grew back, I thought, well, that's interesting. Maybe the doctors and therapists that said, oh, you're just going to grow out of it, it's a bad habit. Maybe they were right. And they weren't, because I relapsed, a few years later, and everything came back. And so this time around, when I was 17, I had my first huge relapse. I tried medication. I look back later, and I was on a huge cocktail of different medications. This one keeps you up, and this one has to put you to sleep, and this one is going to help you focus. And one of the pills that I was on was actually an antipsychotic. And I look back now, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, of course they're trying their best. But at the time, that that really, stung, because I'm like, well, wait a minute. That could have really damaged my, pathways, and that could have really been, bad for me to be taking such a high dosage at such a young age. And so then eventually things grew back again, and I kind of started to get a little bit of an understanding of, hey, well, guess what? You can't really map out when this is going to happen. Your trichotillomania is going to come back when it wants to. It's going to leave when it wants to. And so what are you going to do? For most of my life, I kept it a secret. I talked to a few people, of course, my parents, my family members, some close friends, but it was something I really felt was like a dirty secret. I was really ashamed, really hated it. It was hard to explain to people because I am doing this behavior myself. I'm physically pulling out my own hair, and yet it's not my fault. But I thought it was, and people around me also thought it was me. Why can't you control it? Why can't you stop? Well, I don't know. I don't have the words to explain why I can't. And then one day, I was about 27 and a half, when I thought to myself, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if I wrote a book about this? I don't really read stories about people with trich. I see some little tastes of trichotillomania in the media, but it's always really dramatic, and they're pulling out hair, they're in an asylum or something. And so I started writing this book, and I didn't realize how much I had suppressed as a little kid, trying to put on a brave face and be this strong person of, oh, I'm doing okay. I'm fine. But the whole time I'm writing it, I'm crying hysterically, and I'm getting angry again. And, I'm getting frustrated at the way people had responded to me, or, as a little kid, things like that. And so, once I started to share my story, I connected with other people who had it for the first time ever. I met people, on the internet, still not in real life until a little bit later. But it really was this amazing thing of, wow, I am actually not the only, weird person who does this. I'm a normal person. I just do this behavior. And there are so many other normal people like me who do this behavior too. And we can really relate to each other. And we all kind of go through the same thing of feeling like, hey, we can't share about this. It's so shameful. Yet the second we share about it, we're like, oh, my life has changed. So really, ultimately, sharing my story changed my whole life, because I ended up leaving teaching, wanting to work in the BFRB community just because I was so inspired and I wanted to hear people's stories. And I was just really looking for this connection my whole life. And I didn't get it until I was much older. So now I'm like, I'm connecting all the time. I want to be here fully all the time. And so that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah. Well, those experiences being young and feeling so isolated, it is amazing how the internet has provided us an opportunity to find people who experience these things that are relatively rare, that you might not know somebody just in your general life who has those experiences. But through the internet, we've been able to find that and feel that sense of community and belonging and that universality, like I'm not alone in this. And that's, I'm sure, so powerful in so many people's journeys through healing.
I started the Trichster Diaries, which is the name of the book. I started that as an Instagram account just to kind of get myself out there, see what happens when I share about a memory I have when I pull my hair. And I was completely anonymous for a long time. Like, I wouldn't show my face at all. I wouldn't even put like the initial. I thought someone was going to see it, from my personal life. And I'm looking at these accounts, and people are they are daily, taking pictures every day of their regrowth, of their hair growing, and they're showing their bald spots. They're taking pictures of selfies, and they're trying wigs, and they're doing all these amazing things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you can do that? Even with trying to write, the book and share the story, I still was so scared. But yeah, the internet, you see everybody sharing so openly, and I'm like, I could be like that. And, now I think I am like that, but it's, I tell people now who see me, because I go on TikTok, I talk about it all the time. I have a tattoo of the book title, so strangers ask me what that means. And I tell them, this is new. It took baby steps over years to finally get to the place where I can walk out of the house without fake eyelashes on and show, my bald spots or my missing, my bare eyelids. It took a long time. But yeah, the internet, just seeing so many different people share their story was really game-changing, really world-changing.
Yeah. In addition to just simply being unknown to a lot of people, there are a lot of misunderstandings about BFRBs, both in the general public and, like you mentioned, in the medical community. I was speaking with somebody recently who was asking me about a friend, kind of one of these things, and they have a daughter who I think is about maybe 8 years old or something, and is engaging in the, skin picking. And this kind of intermediary person is asking me some questions just from my clinical background and asking, what suggestions. They're basically at the point of like disciplining this child, like that shame. And so now she's only wearing long sleeve shirts and she's doing all these things. And I'm like, okay, this clearly is not working. And I mean, they're trying to do the best that they can, but there's just so much misinformation out there. And I'm wondering what you find are some of the biggest misconceptions that really need to be addressed and cleared up to better understand and support BFRBs.
The biggest thing that everybody in the BFRB community always hears is this idea of just stop.
Mm-hmm.
Just stop. You're pulling your hair out. Just stop. You're picking your skin. Just stop. And I tell you what, if we could, we would. We don't want to go to school and get made fun of for our missing areas or our scabs. We don't want it. And it hurts to hear because it is putting this unnecessary pressure on the person with the BFRB. These disorders are chronic, like they are lifelong. And something that was so hard for me to understand and something I had to do myself, there weren't people around me to help me do this, was to really understand, okay, I can't just stop. The pressure is too much. So when you put the pressure on me and say, Barbara, stop pulling your eyelashes out. Do you want to look ugly? What if people notice? I'm already thinking those thoughts. And now the adults in my life are saying this to me. I'm going to pull more because I am more upset. So it's like really, really strengthening this vicious cycle of self-loathing and the BFRB trance of like, oh, I am out of control. What can I do? Oh, this will soothe me. But the soothing behavior is making it worse. And so realizing, okay, I can't put the pressure on myself. And I don't want adults to do that either. The best way I can manage it is to be nice. I am going to pull less if I'm nicer to myself after I pull. And that's a big thing because for some, success with a BFRB means pull free, pick free. But that's not possible. For some, people have different journeys. But for the majority of people, like I said, this is a chronic disorder. And so disciplining children or, trying to do these incentive-based, challenges, it's not going to work. It's going to make everything worse. Another misconception is that it's self-harm. So when I was first diagnosed, they gave me a lot of self-harm strategies. They think because I'm pulling my hair out, that I'm wanting that feeling, that sensation, I'm harming myself. It doesn't hurt me. Trichotillomania feels good to me. That's the big thing. Sometimes if I pull a hair out or if I pull an eyelash out, maybe my eye waters. But in general, the feeling isn't pain. That's not what I'm looking for. And it's much more, I guess, tactile than people think. They think it's just, oh, I pulled a hair, that's it. Well, no, there's a whole type of ritual that I do. I look for a certain hair. I'm not just, in The Sopranos, they have a character that has Trick for a very split second, and the character's pulling a big hair extension out of hair, like a big hunk of hair. And that's just not the case. The case is I'm looking for a specific hair with a specific texture. I search for it, I find it, I pull it out. There's a whole different thing. And so it's really not self-harm at all. And so the different types of strategies to use, I think one of the big ones was snapping a rubber band on your wrist. That snap, snap, snap. That's not going to work for me. And even if you try every single intervention that there is, and there are a lot, it's not going to perfectly take over what the BFRB does for me because there are so many different parts. It's my fingertips, it's my eyelid, it's my mouth, it's my skin, it's everything. And so it is not as easy as people think to just stop. Many people like to relate this BFRB almost like someone who smokes cigarettes or has an alcohol addiction. And that was a lot of the way they addressed it as an addictive behavior. They addressed it this way. And it's just, thankfully through, different studies and research and people talking to people with BFRBs, that it's not the same at all. It doesn't have the same, motivation. It's absolutely different. And so many times people say, well, if you want to, stop smoking cigarettes, then just don't buy the cigarettes. How does that relate to someone who's using their body? Should my hands be removed? Like I am wearing mittens in the summertime, so I can try to not pull my hair out, but it's really tough to make such a strong relationship between the two when it's very, very different. It's much more different than people think.
Yeah. People try to assign it to something that they're familiar with, but it's really a very unique experience. From a relationship standpoint, all of those misunderstandings have to have a really significant impact on real life for people, both in their personal relationships and probably, I'm sure their professional lives as well. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit just about how the stigma surrounding BFRBs really impacts those relationships within people's lives.
Oh, yes. So for me personally, I think I lucked out in the sense of, my romantic relationships, I had, a few people that I shared with that were understanding, whether they had a BFRB or not, because, skin picking can look different. And there's a lot of people that will pick the skin around their nails and things like that. And so I kind of lucked out with that, where I would share with people and they understood. However, these BFRBs completely interfere with your social relationships. You don't want to go to a sleepover because you don't want to have the hair all over the floor. You don't want to go to the pool because if you have scabs, they could show. If you're missing areas, that could show. And so it's very tough for people to feel connected to others when they're having this BFRB because they're scared of the judgment of other people. And a lot of times, especially if you're a kid and you are first diagnosed with this BFRB, kids are a little tough. They kind of point things out that are different and they don't really have the hindsight or foresight to say, okay, maybe I shouldn't call somebody out in front of 10 other people about something that's on their face or something that's missing from their face. And so it's really tough. And so many people don't ever get help for their BFRB. They don't ever reach out in a community. They have struggled with, building romantic relationships because they don't want people to see them without all these layers of makeup or headbands or wigs. They don't want to have people see them without this because they were kind of told, hey, if you don't stop, you're really bad. You look ugly. And so, yeah, it's negatively impacting kind of everything around them.
From a mental health standpoint, you mentioned some of those co-occurring diagnoses. And so I'm sure that there's some overlap there. Are there certain mental health diagnoses that are related to BFRBs, or are they a standalone experience, or is it sometimes a little bit of one or the other?
So they are standalone experience. We know we're still doing a lot of research and trying to figure out that now, but BFRBs are standalone. They are their own thing. However, there are different comorbidities. So like generalized anxiety disorder, you may find someone who has that and also a BFRB. OCD, body dysmorphia. It's kind of like all the things that we were misdiagnosed with before people can have those, but they are separate. ADHD is a big one that we talk about. OCD, like I said, body dysmorphia, self-harm, and generalized anxiety.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. And so it's probably really difficult to tease those out. How important is it to tease those out as far as figuring out then what next steps to take to support somebody?
When you first are developing or, first exhibiting this behavior, it's important to understand that it is its own thing because then you can try to manage it without having it connect to so many different things. And what I mean by that is I developed trichotillomania at 10 and something happened where, maybe I was feeling too much of an emotion. I remember kind of pulling my eyebrow out for no reason. But say if I connected it to stress, well, I'm not getting help for that. So now I'm connecting it to stress and anxiety and unhappiness and excitement and joy. I'm connecting it to all these things. So now it's harder to manage because I have used this strategy to soothe myself from all these emotions. If I'm able to find that out, when I was younger, then maybe I could have kind of, cut that off instead. Oh, I'm feeling this and I pull my hair. Okay, well now if I feel this, I should do this instead. And so instead of kind of putting the BFRB to the background and focusing on other things, which, okay, that's, if that's part of your journey, that's fine. But being able to get there so that we don't make all those new pathways and we don't kind of ingrain the behavior into our brains, then maybe we have more of a chance a better chance of managing it better earlier.
And I'm sure, as we've mentioned quite a bit, that connection goes the other way too, where the BFRBs can impact the mental health of people, right? Like if you're dealing with this and having a really hard time with it, I'm sure that it can lead to depression or isolation or all of these other pieces that can be really impactful.
My whole life up until a few years ago, I thought that I was a bad person because I couldn't stop. And I thought that if I didn't have all of my hair intact, that I was this ugly, hideous monster. And so it took me so long to be like, well, wait a minute, what? Why do I keep feeding in this cycle? It's not helping me. If it was like, if I was mean to myself and it somehow made me stop pulling my hair out, then I could maybe justify, okay, that's a weird way to, treat this, but hey, if it's working, it's working, but it's actually making it worse. And so I had to really heal so much of myself that I didn't even realize I needed to heal because I'm like, just kind of pushing everything away. But it totally, it took away my confidence. The second I pulled out my eyebrow hair and noticed a little gap in my eyebrows, I thought, oh my gosh, you are ugly. And that stuck with me my whole life. And so it does change everything to not have the support, to not know anyone around you, to go reach for help and not receive any. It completely can tear you down. And it took a lot of work to get to where I am now. And that, that sucks. It really stinks that it took that long. And so I'm hoping now with the beauty of podcasts and Instagram and all the social media and the way we connect with people, I'm hoping that younger people don't have to go through all that. That hopefully, it's cut short and they can find that self-acceptance that many of us, it took a long time, our whole lives, or sometimes even never. They never got to reach that. And so it just really is, it's a lot more than just, oh, you don't have eyelashes. It's a lot more than that.
So what can partners or parents or colleagues or teachers do to support someone who is dealing with BFRBs? Like, are there specific strategies? Are there specific tools that they should consider? Or conversely, are there specific things that they should not do?
I love this question. Thank you. My best advice when it comes to trying to support someone in your life with a BFRB is to just ask them what they want, right? Just ask them. Because some people love an accountability partner. There are people in the world that say, if my hand goes up to my scalp, I want you to grab it and hold my hand. I want you to call me out when you see me doing the behavior. Some people want that. Other people, that's a nightmare. That's like the worst thing you could do. And so if you just ask them, what is the best way to support me? Or, what is the best way to support you? Then you're better equipped to do that. I know that some people prefer to not talk about it at all. And that is okay too, because if they're doing the behavior and they want to do it, that's up to them. That's their journey. My advice for things to never do, never just stop, never publicly, say something in front of someone. This is a very delicate, situation. And, please treat it as such, please handle with care. Because the fact that you know already about the BFRB, that's a huge step in itself, that they told you. Now let's say and figure out how can I, best support you and try to have that open conversation. Because for many people with BFRBs, they hold it in. They don't really feel comfortable having an in-depth conversation because they're scared of what will happen. But if you're someone who supports them and loves them, and says, hey, I do want to learn more. Tell me what you do after you pull your hair out. Tell me the triggering locations. How can I support you? It's going to turn into this beautiful, magical part of the relationship where now, okay, I feel safe enough to be my full self in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like for so many things when I'm working with my clients in my mental health practice, if you approach things with this attitude of curiosity, and just ask the question. So like, what are you feeling when you're picking? Or what are you feeling when you're pulling your hair? Then if they want to kind of brainstorm some other ideas, there might be something perhaps that could intercede? Like, I don't know, I'm sure you've probably seen some of those little things. I've seen them on Etsy specifically, like some of the little picking tools and different things, which I'm sure has mixed results for different people. But maybe if that's something that fulfills some of that, that might be a tool. But also just not making the assumption that, oh, here's the fix, this is what you have to do. And if it doesn't work, then you're a failure.
Yeah, and that's what's so fun about trying different interventions and also getting to know people in the same community as you, is that you can share what has worked, what hasn't worked. Okay, this worked for me when I was 16. I'm 32 now. Let me try it again. You can build this, we call it a BFRB toolkit or a Trichster toolkit of all these things that you can use. And some of them are so fun, like the little hair pulling thing from the internet, diamond paintings, crocheting. So now not only do we have this BFRB where we're using our hands and we're very good at it, we're good at little things and picking little things. We can now create beautiful projects. We can have a blanket. We can learn these new skills because we're already pretty good at maneuvering things. But there is that element of, let's have fun with it. And so, hey, if you're someone who supports someone and loves someone with the BFRB and you bring them home a craft, that's really cool. And that's going to really save them an hour or two of time where they might have been pulling instead.
Yeah, I love that. So Barbara, I really appreciate your time today, but this brings us to our closing question. If you could send a message to your younger self when you were just starting to learn about and understand trichotillomania and how it impacted you, what is the thing that you think you most needed to hear at that time in your life?
Well, you're going to have me start crying. That's first of all. I cry when I think about her. The biggest thing that I would tell her is that So the biggest thing that I would tell her is that it's not her fault. Because I didn't have anyone tell me that. It was very much so, let's stop this thing. Let's stop. You have to stop. You have to stop. And instead, no one said, hey, this is not your fault at all. You're just a little kid. And so as a teacher, I looked at kids who were the same age as me. And at the time when I started pulling, and I would think, how could they be so cruel to me? I'm this little kid. And I don't know what I'm doing, and neither do you, but you could have been nicer. And so I just would have hugged her and been like, it's okay. It's not weird. It's not your fault. You're going to be loved so much. It's really not the worst part about you. Please don't, lose all your confidence over this. It'll be hard, but you'll get through it. But yeah, the main thing is it's not your fault, and it never was.
You've got me tearing up too. Barbara Lally, author of The Trichster Diaries and host of the podcast Trich Talks. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. I love talking to you.
It's important to remember that neurodivergence is more than just autism and ADHD. And even things like body-focused repetitive behaviors can be helped and supported by reducing the stigma surrounding them and providing a neurodiversity affirming environment. Shaming someone into stopping something like picking their skin or biting their nails or pulling their hair might work in the short term, but it definitely doesn't help solve the problem. Instead, it just creates an environment where people are afraid to ask for help. We can think about how this applies to so many other areas of neurodivergence or other differences too. Whether it's someone with a learning disability or obsessive thought patterns or intense anxiety, shining light on all of these issues and making it okay to talk about them creates a pathway to also find solutions. I'm Emily Kircher-Morris. I'll see you next time on the Neurodiversity Podcast.
Thanks to Barbara Lally for telling her story. If you'd like to know more about Barbara and her work, it's all in the show notes. Also, if you are a teacher and you're not already a member of the Neurodiversity University Educator Hub, we're going to be opening up registration in January. It will only be open for a limited time, so there's a way to make sure you're notified when it happens. Sign up at the link in the show notes. Our host is Emily Kircher-Morris. Our office manager and social media director is Krista Brown. I'm the executive producer, Dave Morris. For all of us, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. This is a service of the Neurodiversity Alliance.